So if you have watched the last video I did on my engine building drawer, some of you may have noticed that I purposefully deleted the Ridge Reamer box. I did that just to see how many remarks I would get and if anybody was interested in seeing it. Well, I'm going to show you anyway. A Ridge Reamer is when you can't get a piston out of the cylinder because the rings have worn the cylinder larger, but right under the top ring a ridge forms. So when you go to rebuild the engine, you can't get the piston out because the rings won't go past this ridge. So what you do is you push the piston down, slide this thing in. Notice these are flush right now. By tightening this up, it forces these out. So you keep expanding this portion until it's tight in the cylinder bore. Once it's tight, there's a cutter right here. You take and loosen these two, pull this out until it's flush to the cylinder bore, tighten those two up, and you can see that there is a very fine thread right here. So as you turn this whole portion here walks right up that thread and cuts the ridge with this cutting tool. So that is a Ridge Reamer. So the first thing I'm going to show you is my transfer punches. I think twice now, if you can see the variation in colors, these little tits, the center punches, sometimes get broken off, and I just anneal them, turn a new center on them, and then reheat them. And I think I've done that 2, maybe 3 times, but I've had this whole set since the 60s. The reason I wanted to do that one first is in the engine building drawer, this last one, I mentioned the unison, and I mentioned that you can tune dual quads. Well, this fits over a AFB, almost any of them. All of these are the same size. So with this hole here, I can use my unison, put it on top of that like that, and then check the front one and the back one and make sure that they are both drawing the same amount of air. And that way you get your carburetors balanced on idle, and then you make sure that your linkage is set at the same distance from fulcrum, so when you open the throttle, both carburetors are giving you the same amount of flow, both air and fuel. Next is a bender. I made this back in the 80s. I've got these all over the United States. I used to build these 25 at a time. They're fairly simple. All of these pins are what they call stress proof. It's what I used to make my go-kart axles out of, but obviously much larger. And these pins can be moved in different locations. This one here, all 3 pins are 1/2 inch, but by putting bushings on them and pieces of tubing, you can make it much larger and larger and larger. And I've got these that I've made for doing, if you don't want a radius on your bend, with these 2 attachments, you can make a sharp bend in like 1/8, maybe 3/16. And then I've made these, I've just drilled these holes out for the 1/2 inch pins, but that with this I can make brake lines and fuel lines. Here's a bunch more of adapters. This I use, it goes into the handle if I want to make my handle on that bender longer. This is my favorite tubing bender. I've done a lot of brake and fuel line with this. I like the way it just pushes in, and you can check your degree of bend, and it's a nice soft radius. It's not nearly as sharp as those, so the chance of kinking is decreased. And you can see it does all different sizes by just turning this block upside down. In fact, it might be upside down now. Plumb Bob. This one I can hang from the ceiling if I'm doing a layout on the floor or over my layout table. T-handled Allen wrenches, extra chalk, string. I keep a lot of string because instead of coiling it back up, I just lay it out, and when I'm done I usually just throw it away. This is a wrench I made long ago for adjusting the spring on my treadle hammer. Here's a spare. These are 1/2-13, and what's in here is 5/16 for doing heavy work. There's the handle for it. This is a flaring tool, actually a beading tool. With this, these are rubber, so you can put your tube in there if you want to put a bead on, like radiator hose piece. Put your hose in there, and then there are 3 different sizes for putting a bead on, like radiator. If you're building a radiator where you put your inlet or outlet on, you always want to put a bead on that, so you can go down to very small. Here's an old radius tool for cutting torch. Here's my good Plumb Bob. All of these are just dividers that came with the drawers, all the drawers of the top and bottom box. So that completes the toolbox tour. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. See you later.